My name is Aurelia Hart, and I'm 27 years old. If you asked anyone who knows me, they'd say I'm the kind of woman who builds things carefully, steadily, with patience and intention. Whether it's a structure or a relationship, I believe in foundations. You measure twice. You reinforce. You calculate the risks. You build a life the same way you build a home, purposefully, not impulsively. For 4 years, I thought I was building something real with my boyfriend, Evan Mercer. I was wrong. Evan and I had just moved into a brand new apartment. Correction, I paid for us to move into a brand new apartment. I covered the deposit, the first month's rent, the movers, the fees. I qualified for the lease alone because I'm an architect who actually earns an architect's salary while Evan works in digital lifestyle content. His words were the job description is mostly vibes, ring lights, and whatever trend is currently rolling across social media. His entire life was an aesthetic, a curated performance. Mine was deadlines, building codes, structural integrity. The first cracks began showing around 6 months before everything fell apart. Evan became distant, distracted, moody, glued to his phone like it was oxygen. He said he was stressed about the algorithm or brand partnerships or how he needed to reinvent his entire online persona by the end of the quarter. I blamed his job, the move, the pressure he put on himself. Or maybe that overly friendly guy from his HIT class who suddenly occupied every corner of his notifications. I kept being patient. That was my mistake. 2 weeks before the breakup, I had planned a long-awaited Vegas trip with my college girlfriends, a reunion we'd had on the calendar for nearly a year. The night before my flight, Evan spiraled. Full meltdown. Tears, trembling hands, pacing back and forth. He said he had a terrible feeling about my trip, like something awful would happen if I left. He said the new apartment made him anxious, and he needed me close that weekend. And then came the classic dagger. If you really loved me, you'd stay. So I stayed. I canceled the flight, swallowed the cost, put on a brave face, cooked dinner, tried to soothe him. The next morning, he got a brunch invite from his friends and left me alone in the apartment for 8 hours. There are moments in life you remember not because they're dramatic, but because they quietly reveal a truth you weren't ready to see. That was one of them. But I didn't act on it. Not yet. Then came Tuesday, the day everything snapped. I'd just wrapped a massive architectural project, one I'd poured my soul into for months. My boss had pulled me aside to tell me a promotion was practically guaranteed. I was walking on air. I stopped by Evan's favorite Thai place, the expensive one with the perfect pad CEU, to surprise him. When I opened the door to our apartment, the air felt wrong, cold, detached. Evan wasn't in sweats or lounging on the couch like usual. He was dressed sharply, clothes I hadn't seen before, a fitted black shirt, tailored trousers, polished boots, hair-styled face a little too flawless for a random weekday evening, and his phone screen down, but glowing with new messages, was practically buzzing off the cushion beside him. "Hey," I said, trying to maintain my hopeful mood. "Project's finally done. I brought dinner." He didn't smile, didn't even soften. He looked at me like I'd interrupted something he considered far more important. "Aurelia," he said flatly, "we need to talk." Every organ in my body shifted. I set the bag of food on the counter because suddenly my hands felt too weak to grip it. "Okay," I said slowly. "What's going on?" He stood, and I saw it immediately. This wasn't spontaneous. This was rehearsed. I feel stifled," he said, gesturing vaguely around the apartment. "All of this feels too final. I'm only 28. I haven't lived. I don't even know who I am anymore. I feel like I'm just Aurelia's boyfriend, not Evan. I need space. I need novelty. I need to be the main character in my own life for a while." I stared at him, not emotionally, clinically almost, like examining a support beam I already suspected was compromised. And I asked. His chin lifted. He delivered the line he'd practiced, "I think we should both see other people for a while." He said it with a soft, patronizing tilt of his head, the kind people use to appear mature while saying something cruel. Movies teach you to fight at this moment, to cry, plead, bargain, shout, "Is there someone else?" But I didn't feel desperation, just clarity, a sudden icy familiarity with the truth. Evan wasn't sad. He wasn't conflicted. He was relieved, liberated, excited. He had already emotionally checked out. He just needed to secure permission so he wouldn't be the villain. So I gave him exactly what he wasn't expecting. "Fair enough," I said. The words sliced the air. His face collapsed. The smug confidence evaporated. He blinked at me, startled, as if I'd just changed the script without warning. "That's it," he sputtered. Well, I said calmly after 4 years together, if you want to see other people, that's a breakup. So yes, fair enough. I walked toward the bedroom to pack. That's when the panic exploded. A break, Aurelia, he yelled, following me. I said a break a few weeks. You're just giving up. 4 years, and you're giving up. You gave up first, I said, turning to face him. You wrote a speech. You dressed up. You had somewhere else to be tonight. I'm not going to wait around while you find yourself with someone else. That's not a break, that's a backup plan. And I'm not it. His eyes hardened. The mask snapped back into place. Fine, he spat. Be dramatic. I guess you won't be coming to Lucas's game night tomorrow. I was going to invite you, but now that'd just be awkward. Just like that, he revealed the truth. He had already anticipated my exit. He just didn't expect me to walk so easily. You're right, I said. It would be awkward. I packed. I didn't take the TV, the expensive bedding, the kitchen gadgets, just clothes, laptop, toothbrush. Evan stood in the living room, arms crossed, seething as I headed to the door. I paused only once, hand on the knob. I'll coordinate with you about picking up the rest of my things, I said. I'll be off the lease by the 1st. Goodbye, Evan. I walked out. At the elevator, I heard the quick click of our door opening and closing. He was leaving too. Couldn't even stay in the same space as the consequences of his own choices. An hour later, I was on my friend Dana's couch. She took one look at me, handed me a blanket, and said, His loss. My wine. Start talking. For the first time in months, I felt safe, seen, free. I didn't sleep much that first night on Dana's couch. My mind wasn't racing with heartbreak or regret. It was sorting, compartmentalizing, reorganizing. The way I handled blueprints. The way I handled every crisis that had ever come across my desk. When something is structurally unsound, you don't patch it. You don't pretend. You dismantle it carefully and rebuild with intention. By sunrise, that was exactly what I planned to do with my life. Donna made coffee the next morning strong enough to wake the dead. She sat across from me, chin in hand, studying my face like she was waiting for tears. But I didn't cry. Not then. Not at all. Instead, I opened my laptop. Aurelia, she said gently, maybe just breathe today. I am breathing, I replied, typing. Just not wasting time doing it. I logged into the utility accounts electricity, water, gas. Change of responsibility forms submitted. I moved everything into Evan's name because he was the one who wanted independence, right? I canceled the high-speed internet I paid for. I requested address changes on the accounts tied to me, logged into my cloud storage, removed his biometrics from every device, changed every password he had ever seen or guessed. Each click was a clean cut, a bolt removed, a beam set free. By noon, the digital version of our relationship had vanished. I was relieved in a way I hadn't anticipated, like unclogging a drain you didn't know was blocked. Donna watched all of this while scrolling through her phone. You're terrifying when you're calm. I'm efficient, I corrected. But efficiency doesn't protect you from everything. Around 5 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved. I expected Evan finally noticing the Wi-Fi outage, but the text preview wasn't his tone. Hey, Aurelia, it's Lucas. I heard what Evan did. He's a complete idiot. I blinked at that. Lucas, the cousin Evan always described as overly logical and annoyingly grounded, wasn't someone I'd ever been close to. We saw each other at family gatherings, birthday dinners, the occasional holiday. He'd always been polite, dryly funny, in a way I appreciated, steady, in a way Evan wasn't. His message felt sincere. Then another text. Game night is still on tonight at 7. I'm making my 7-layer dip. You should come. Don't let him think you're home crying. Come have fun. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My instinct was to decline. It felt too soon, too symbolic, too potentially messy. But then I thought about what it represented. Not pettiness, not revenge. Freedom. Dana leaned over my shoulder, reading the messages. Please go. You need something that isn't Wall's paperwork or my ugly couch. It's not ugly, I said automatically. She raised an eyebrow. It's extremely ugly, I admitted. That's why you need to go, she said. Wear something that makes you feel like yourself again. I hesitated for a moment longer, then typed, Me see you at 7. I'll bring beer. By 6:30, I was standing outside Lucas's apartment building, clutching a six-pack like it was a diplomatic offering. My stomach fluttered, not from nerves about seeing him, but the surreal feeling of walking into a space that Evan previously claimed as his circle, his turf. But tonight it felt like neutral ground. Lucas opened the door before I knocked. He didn't hug me, didn't rush me, didn't pity me. He simply nodded once. Aurelia, he said with a warm, familiar half-smile. Glad you made it. His place was bright, loud, and full of familiar faces, friends from group hangouts over the years, people I knew but had never truly known. People who now looked at me not with awkward sympathy, but with a casual, easy belonging. One person was noticeably absent. Lucas leaned toward me and lowered his voice. In case you're wondering, Evan isn't here. He said he was finding himself tonight. I laughed softly. Let me guess. At a new cocktail bar with the guy from his gym. Lucas didn't even look surprised. That was my guess too. The tension in my shoulders dissipated. For the first time in months, I wasn't performing emotional labor or tiptoeing around someone's insecurity. I was simply existing. The game night kicked off with card games, trivia apps, and Lucas's legendary 7-layer dip, which he guarded like a dragon protects treasure. People teased, shouted answers, argued about rules, laughed until they wheezed. I found myself laughing too full unguarded laughter that felt foreign in my own chest. Then came the trivia round. Lucas and I ended up on the same team, both intensely competitive. He had that quiet fire, the kind that doesn't flare up but burns steadily with absolute conviction. No, not that one, he muttered, scrolling through answer choices. Think early 1800s, not late. Lucas, I countered, leaning closer to peer at the screen. Your chronology is backwards. Your confidence is unfounded. Your arrogance is loud. We both laughed. At one point, he leaned in, whispering, "It's John Quincy Adams." I whispered back, "I swear I was just about to say that." Right then, our teammate Chloe, known for documenting everything, raised her phone. "Team champions," she yelled. The flash burst. She posted the photo before we even finished the round. In the picture, Lucas and I were shoulder to shoulder laughing with our heads tilted naturally toward each other. It didn't look romantic. It didn't look scandalous. It looked easy. I didn't think twice about it. Not until I left. When I got to a red light, my phone vibrated violently, over and over, notifications crashing into the screen like a hailstorm. Evan. Dozens of messages. What the hell is this? Aurelia, explain this right now. A screenshot of Chloe's story. My face circled in red like evidence. Angry demands. Accusations. Hypocritical rage. He was allowed to find himself with another man, but I couldn't eat chips at his cousin's apartment. I stared at the screen and started laughing, not out of spite, but disbelief. Pure, uncut hypocrisy. He had released me, but expected I would stay suspended like a lantern he could return to whenever he pleased. Seeing me smiling without him cracked the delusion he'd built. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And for the rest of the drive to Dana's, I felt light, untethered, whole. That night, Evan sent a dozen more messages. I didn't see any of them. I slept deeply for the first time in months. 6 months. That's how long it takes for a building to go from blueprint to standing structure. That's also how long it took for my life to become something entirely new, unrecognizable from the one I had shared with Evan. Not because I rebuilt quickly, but because I rebuilt correctly, with intention, with patience. With a level of honesty I had denied myself for far too long. The professional transformation came first. The promotion my boss hinted at became official 2 weeks after the breakup. Senior architect at 27 wasn't typical in my firm, but my last project sealed it. My designs were cleaner, my presentations sharper. I had more time, more focus, more energy to pour into my work, not because I suddenly became more talented, but because I had stopped carrying the dead weight of someone else's emotional chaos. I moved into a new apartment downtown, a place filled with quiet elegance rather than curated aesthetics. I chose every piece of furniture myself, every light fixture, every color palette. For the first time since I was 19, everything in my home reflected me, not the version of me a partner needed or expected. More importantly, I began taking care of myself in ways I had neglected for years. I started running again in the mornings. I joined a strength training class, something Evan always dismissed as too intense, because in his words, women who lift look scary. After the first month, a trainer told me I had perfect form for deadlifts, stable core, steady posture, determination written in my bones. I suppose that made sense. I'd been carrying emotional weight for so long that physical weight felt almost easy. It was around this time my friends began asking questions I wasn't ready to answer out loud. Questions like, "So, are you and Lucas? Do you two talk every day? Should we expect wedding invitations soon?" I always responded the same way. It's not like that, because for a while it wasn't. It couldn't be. I needed to know the new version of myself before attaching it to someone else. Still, Lucas became a consistent presence in the background of my life. A steady hum, a quiet grounding force that never pushed and never demanded. If I texted him, he responded never instantly, never with desperation, but with attention. If he invited me somewhere, it was always phrased as an option, not an expectation. After a while, I realized that Lucas never once tried to win me. He didn't hover, he didn't rescue, he didn't perform. He simply showed up in ways I didn't even realize I needed. He was the first person to congratulate me on my promotion, the first one who asked to see photos of my new apartment. He remembered the exact pad CEU dish I liked from the Thai place Evan had always taken credit for discovering. When I mentioned I started strength training, he didn't make a joke or raise an eyebrow. He said, "That explains why you've been walking like your quads are angry at you," then bought me a foam roller that saved my life the next morning. But it wasn't flirtation, not yet. It was something else, something more meaningful. One Friday evening, 3 months after moving into my new place, I found myself standing on my balcony as the sun set between skyscrapers. I texted Lucas a photo of the sky orange bleeding into purple, the horizon glowing like a promise. No words, no context, no expectations. He replied 5 minutes later, "Looks peaceful. You deserve that." Just 4 words, but they stuck with me for days. 2 weeks later, we found ourselves at the same gathering, Chloe and Dave's joint birthday dinner. I hadn't known Lucas would be there, and I told myself the warm flutter in my chest when he arrived was just surprise. He took the seat across from me. Throughout the meal, we found ourselves falling into rhythm without even trying. Shared jokes, parallel comments, moments of silent understanding. When dessert arrived, a ridiculously tall caramel cake, Lucas slid his plate slightly toward me so I could steal a bite. I teased him for being predictable. He pretended to be offended. The exchange was easy, comfortable, dangerous. But the moment that changed everything wasn't dramatic. It was simple. As the group got up to head to the bar, my sweater slipped off the back of my chair. Lucas reached for it, folded it neatly, and handed it to me without a word. Our fingers brushed. Something small and electric flickered between us. He noticed it too. I saw the way his posture tightened. For half a second, how he looked away before looking back with a softness I didn't recognize. That night, walking home, I realized something quietly monumental. Lucas didn't represent escape or validation or winning a breakup. He represented the version of me that existed when no one was draining me. He represented calm respect, thoughtfulness, safety, honesty, all the things I knew I wanted but had been afraid to expect. Still, we didn't rush. Neither of us wanted that. Our relationship shaped itself slowly the way strong structures are supposed to. One beam at a time. One shared moment, one lingering look, one confession. It wasn't until month 4 that the first real shift happened. Lucas came over to help me assemble a bookshelf, my design, his tools. As we worked, our conversations drifted from jokes to personal stories, then finally to fears. He admitted he'd always worried that getting close to me would feel like stepping into family drama he didn't want. I admitted I feared repeating the mistake of building a life around someone who didn't value the pieces I brought. When the bookshelf was finished, we both stepped back to admire it. The warm wood, the clean lines, the perfect balance. "Looks solid," he said. "It should," I replied. "It's built on a stable foundation." He looked at me, and this time neither of us looked away. The first kiss wasn't rushed, wasn't passionate, wasn't cinematic. It was soft, deliberate, like a quiet agreement between 2 people who had finally arrived at the same place at the same time. From there, everything grew naturally. By month 6, we were something I never imagined I'd want again, a couple, but a different kind of couple. Balanced, steady, trustworthy. A partnership without power games or emotional manipulation. A relationship built not on fear or insecurity, but on 2 people choosing each other every day. That was the life I walked into when Chloe and Dave announced their wedding date. A life I had built for myself, not around someone else. A life strong enough to withstand the one person who would try to drag me back into the rubble. Because Evan was about to return, and he wasn't coming with regret, not the kind that leads to growth anyway. I didn't plan on seeing Evan again, not out of resentment, but because he no longer existed in the world I lived in. Not really. He had become a distant memory, a cautionary tale, a flawed blueprint I had torn down long ago. I had no anger left, no attachment, no lingering ache, just neutrality. The kind of emotional quiet you only experience once you've truly moved on. But life has a way of testing your stability the moment you feel strongest. Chloe and Dave's wedding was held in a glass-walled hall overlooking the river, a warm, elegant space where every reflection shimmered like it had been polished specifically for the occasion. Lucas and I walked in hand, not dramatically, not as a statement, but because it felt natural, organic, the continuation of a rhythm we'd been building for months. I wore a deep slate blue dress, simple but structured clean lines, a soft neckline, the kind of garment that felt like it belonged in a life I had chosen, not one I had settled for. Lucas looked devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit, warm brown eyes, soft every time he glanced at me. We weren't a spectacle, but we were solid, centered, the kind of couple whose presence makes sense even before you know the whole story. And that was the problem, because Evan was there. I didn't notice him at first. The ceremony was beautiful. String lights, vows that actually sounded sincere, a moment when Lucas gently squeezed my hand at a particularly sweet line about choosing each other every day. I was busy being present, living in this well-earned chapter of my life. But once we moved to the reception hall, I felt it, the familiar, intrusive stare from across the room, the weight of someone trying to reclaim a story they no longer owned. Evan stood near the bar alone, wearing a suit that was just a little too tight and an expression that was just a little too desperate. His hair was slightly overstyled, his posture off his jaw tight, in the way people tighten it when they're fighting resentment and regret at the same time. Lucas went to get us drinks, and before he could take 3 steps, Evan moved, cutting across the room like he had been waiting for this moment since the day I blocked his number. He stopped directly in front of me. "Aurelia," he said, his voice strained, "I see you're still with him." I offered a polite nod, friendly but not inviting. "Evening, Evan. It's a beautiful wedding." He blinked, thrown off balance. He wasn't expecting calm. He wasn't expecting courtesy. He wasn't expecting a woman who no longer cared enough to engage in emotional theatrics. He stepped closer, too close. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "I get it. You were angry. You wanted to hurt me. You wanted to prove something." I frowned. "Prove what?" He gestured vaguely toward Lucas, who had paused across the room, watching discreetly, but not intervening, respecting my autonomy. "This," Evan said. "All of this. Him. You two together. I get it. You needed a rebound. A distraction. But it's been 6 months. Don't you think the joke's gone on long enough?" I actually laughed. Softly. Not to mock him, but because the delusion was so complete, so perfectly. Evan, it almost deserved recognition. "A joke," I repeated. "Evan, this isn't a joke." "Yes, it is," he insisted. "Come on, Aurelia. You and Lucas, please. I know you. I know what we had. You loved me. We had 4 years. You can't just throw that away." There it was, the core of his worldview. We had history, therefore he had ownership. Not partnership. Ownership. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "I'm simply living a life you weren't capable of being part of." That hit him, but not enough. The desperation cracked further. "Look," he blurted. "I've been doing therapy. Real therapy. I know I messed up. I know that guy I was seeing was a mistake. I got caught up in stupid things. I've grown. I miss us. I miss my best friend." He said the last 2 words like they were a trump card. But something inside me softened, not out of nostalgia, but empathy. Evan wasn't evil. He was lost. He always had been. And somewhere deep down he believed his version of events believed he had been the one abandoned, not the one who had created the exit. I took a slow breath. "Evan," I said gently, "you don't miss me. You miss what my love did for you. You miss the stability, the certainty, the safety net." His expression flickered a tiny break in the armor. "You loved being loved," I continued. "You loved that I held everything together while you spiraled. You loved that I forgave things you never apologized for. You didn't love me, you loved the structure I provided." "That's not true," he whispered. Across the room, Lucas caught my eye. His expression wasn't jealous or possessive. It was concerned, supportive, present. A silent, "I'm here if you need me, but you don't need rescuing." It meant more than he knew. I turned back to Evan, and for the first time since he'd approached me, my voice was completely steady. "You wanted to see other people," I said. "I simply did what you asked." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand gently, not to silence him, but to close the door on a chapter that had been over long before either of us admitted it. "I'm not with Lucas to hurt you," I said. "I'm with him because he chooses me. Every day. Without ego, without games, without needing me to be smaller so he can feel bigger." Evan's face crumbled. The realization finally landed, not that he'd lost me, but that he'd never understood me, never appreciated me, never valued me the way Lucas does with quiet consistency. I stepped back. "Take care of yourself, Evan," I said softly. Truly. Then I turned and walked toward Lucas. Toward the life I built, not the one I escaped. Lucas offered me my drink with a small smile, searching my face. You okay? I'm perfect, I said, sliding my hand into his. And I was. We walked onto the dance floor as the lights dimmed and the music swelled around us. Lucas pulled me close, not possessively but protectively, the way people do when they know exactly what they're holding and exactly how hard it was to earn. As we moved to the music, I rested my head lightly against his shoulder and let the past dissolve behind us. Some structures collapse because they're meant to. Some break so you can build stronger ones.